Long before diversity panels, long before inclusion writers, hashtags, or red carpet statements, these women, these iconic ladies of the screen, were already here. Beautiful, brilliant, unapologetically talented. But Hollywood didn't care about any of that, not if your skin was too dark or your bloodline wasn't pure enough. So, to survive the system, many of them were forced to pass as white, to hide who they were, to change their names, to rewrite their own family histories just for a seat at the table. Some did it willingly to escape poverty. Others were pressured by studios, stylists, even publicists, all telling them the same thing. You're too good to waste on a colored role. Let's clean it up a little. And so they did. They lightened their skin. They raised their hairlines. They adopted new accents, new backstories, new names. Because in old Hollywood, being black or biracial wasn't just a career risk. It was a deal breaker. Today, we remember these women not for the lie they were forced to live, but for the legacy they left behind anyway. Because no matter how much the industry tried to erase them, the truth still found its way through. Merle Oberon was Hollywood royalty, elegant, mysterious, and always camera ready. But what the cameras never showed was the truth. She was born Estelle Merle O'Brien Thompson in Bombay, India, raised by her mother Charlotte Selby, who was of South Asian and Maori descent. Her father was never confirmed, and her family history was anything but glamorous. But when Merle set her sights on Hollywood, she learned quickly that where she came from wouldn't open doors. It would slam them shut. The system didn't just reward whiteness, it demanded it. So the industry gave Merle a makeover, not just in makeup and lighting, but in identity. Her birthplace was changed to Tasmania. Her mother, publicly downgraded to her maid, her darker relatives, cut out of the picture entirely. She was trained to speak like a British aristocrat, to move like a woman of European nobility, all while hiding her truth. Even her lighting was carefully managed on set. Cinematographers were told to light her only from the left side to soften her darker features. She used special makeup to appear paler. Everything about her presentation was designed to protect the illusion, and it worked. In 1939, she starred in Wuthering Heights as Kathy, opposite Laurence Olivier. That role earned her an Oscar nomination, making her the first Asian woman to ever be nominated, even though no one knew it. She lived her entire public life as a white woman, not because she wanted to erase her past, but because the industry gave her no other way forward. The cost? She denied her mother, she denied her homeland, and she carried a lie until the day she died. Merle Oberon didn't fool the world for fun. She did it to survive in a world that only saw value in erasure. Her legacy is a beautiful one, but a haunted one too, because she wasn't just hiding from the press. She was hiding from the very people who made her who she was. You've probably never heard her name, but Madeline Anderson was a pioneer, the first black woman to direct a nationally broadcast TV documentary in the US. She was a filmmaker, a visionary, and a groundbreaker. But to get there, she had to become invisible first. In the late 1950s, Madeline was desperate to work in film and television, not as an actress, but behind the camera, where no black woman had ever been allowed to lead. Everywhere she applied, the doors shut fast the moment they saw her skin color. So she tried something else. She started passing. She lightened her skin. She changed how she dressed. She adjusted the way she spoke. And most importantly, she never corrected anyone who assumed she was white. It wasn't vanity. It wasn't betrayal. It was survival. And it worked, at least for a while. She landed a job at a major TV production house in New York. She worked on educational documentaries. She learned the system. She started climbing. But the closer she got to the top, the more dangerous the lie became. Colleagues began making racist jokes around her, assuming they were safe. Producers talked about those people like she wasn't one of them. And Madeline had to sit there, smile politely, and swallow her fury, just to keep her job. Eventually, she couldn't take it anymore. She left the mainstream system and decided to tell her own stories as herself. In 1969, she directed I Am Somebody, a landmark documentary about black hospital workers on strike in South Carolina. It was personal, it was political, and it made history, not just because of its subject, but because a black woman directed it. Madeline Anderson stopped passing when she realized her silence was helping no one, especially not the women coming up behind her. She may not have been a movie star, but she broke barriers in rooms where black women were never supposed to exist. And the fact that she had to hide to get there, that's not her shame. it's Hollywood's. Jean Peters was the woman every studio dreamed of. That wholesome smile, the Midwestern charm, a face that practically sold apple pie. She starred opposite Marlon Brando, Howard Hughes, and Tyrone Power. She was glamorous but grounded, sexy but safe, a woman Hollywood could parade as the ideal American sweetheart. But for decades, there's been one lingering question. Was she passing? Jean was born in Canton, Ohio, in 1926, or at least that's what the official story said. But from the beginning, there were inconsistencies. Her features didn't quite match the all-American narrative: full lips, copper-toned skin, and thick dark hair that stylists often tried to bleach or straighten. Rumors began to swirl that Jean had black ancestry on her mother's side, or possibly through a grandparent. Nothing was ever confirmed, but nothing was denied either. And in old Hollywood, that kind of silence was strategic. The gossip intensified when Jean married Howard Hughes, one of the richest and most paranoid men in the world. Insiders claimed Hughes had Jean's background thoroughly investigated before the wedding, not just for scandal, but for race. He allegedly hired private detectives to dig into her genealogy, searching for even a hint of black heritage. Why? Because even a whisper of Negro blood, as it was called back then, could ruin a career, or a brand. Whatever they found, the results were buried, and Jean's image stayed spotless. She never spoke about her heritage. She never pushed back against the rumors. She just kept playing her role, the pure, sweet, blue-eyed leading lady, until she quietly stepped away from the spotlight in the late 1950s. She spent the rest of her life out of the public eye, avoiding interviews, refusing to discuss her past. But the whispers never stopped. Whether she passed or was simply protected, Jean Peters became yet another woman whose identity was managed, filtered, and buried for public consumption. We may never know the full truth, but in a system that silenced so many, the silence itself is a clue. You couldn't flip on a television in the 50s and 60s without seeing Dinah Shore. She was the smiling face of afternoon variety shows, the sweet voice behind easy listening ballads, and the woman who practically helped invent TV hosting as we know it. To America, she was safe, soft-spoken, blonde, white. But behind that polished exterior was a story that still hasn't been fully told. Dinah was born Frances Rose Shore in Winchester, Tennessee in 1916. Her family was Jewish, and in the South, that alone made them outsiders. But there were also whispers about her features, about her complexion, about the way she always looked just a little different under the studio lights. Rumors began to spread that Dinah's family tree might have included black ancestry, possibly on her mother's side. It was never confirmed. There was no scandal, because there couldn't be. The second someone raised the question, the conversation stopped. You have to understand, Dinah wasn't just an actress. She was a brand. She endorsed products. She hosted major specials. She was in American living rooms every day. If those rumors were true, and if they ever became public, it could have ended her entire career overnight. And so, like so many others, she said nothing. Not once in her decades-long public life did she ever address the speculation. Not in interviews, not in memoirs, not in passing. Was she protecting her career, her family, or was it all just rumor? We may never know, but what we do know is this. Hollywood has always been more concerned with appearance than truth, and women like Dinah Shore were often trapped in between, their success dependent on how well they could play a role, even off camera. So whether she passed or was simply allowed to pass without question, her legacy is another reminder of just how much the system demanded silence and how many women gave it just to survive. By the time Lynette McKee hit the screen, Hollywood was changing, but not fast enough. Light-skinned, fiercely talented, and classically trained, Lynette had everything the studios loved: a versatile voice, stunning features, and presence that jumped off the screen. But as far as the industry was concerned, she had one problem. She was black, and they didn't want her to look like it. Lynette was biracial, born in Detroit to a white mother and black father. And when she stepped into auditions, casting directors didn't see complexity. They saw a chance to market her as racially ambiguous, or better yet, just pass her off as white altogether. In her breakthrough role in Sparkle, 1976, she played a version of herself, a light-skinned black girl in a black story. But when the studio began promoting the film, something shifted. Publicists downplayed her background. Magazines described her as exotic. And suddenly, the woman leading a black coming-of-age story was being filtered through whiteness to sell the film. Lynette later spoke out about it. She said Hollywood often didn't want to acknowledge her blackness, especially when casting her opposite white actors. She was offered roles as Latinas, Italians, Middle Eastern women, anything but black. It was subtle, it was strategic, and it was exhausting. She didn't want to pass, she wanted to represent. But every step forward came with quiet pressure to soften her truth, to play it down, blend in, be palatable. Even as late as the 1980s, Lynette McKee found herself being boxed out of roles because she was too light to be black, too black to be white. And in between, that wasn't her choice, but became her identity in Hollywood. She went on to star in The Cotton Club, Malcolm X, and a series of acclaimed stage roles. But the roles she didn't get, the erasure she faced, told a different story. Lynette McKee wasn't hiding. She just had to survive in an industry that refused to see her whole. And in that way, she carried the weight of every woman who had to shrink to fit the screen. Carol Channing was Broadway royalty. Big smile, big eyes, bigger voice. She was Hello Dolly. She was thoroughly modern Millie. She was a one-woman brand, unforgettable, unmistakable, and to most of the world, completely white. But what fans didn't know, and what Hollywood never wanted to say, was that Carol Channing had black ancestry. She revealed it herself, late in life, long after the curtain had come down. In interviews and in her memoir, she shared that her father was a light-skinned black man, born in Georgia, who passed as white to get ahead. And so did she, by default. Carol didn't grow up identifying as black, but she always knew. She described how her father would slip when speaking in reference our people. She heard the rumors whispered during her rise. She felt the tension in rooms when people looked just a little too closely. But in mid-20th century show business, even a hint of black blood could get you blacklisted. So Carol played the part. The bubbly white lead, the showgirl with no secrets, the smiling face that lit up marquees. As long as she said nothing that would scare off a segregated America. And she didn't. Not until she was decades removed from the prime of her career. When she finally shared her truth, some fans were shocked. Some dismissed it. Some said it was too late to matter, but it does matter. Because Carol Channing's story is what happens when the system works too well, when it convinces you to tuck a part of yourself so far away, you almost forget it's there. She didn't pass with pride, she passed to survive. And even after the reveal, the industry barely flinched, like it had never been ready to face what it knew all along. Carol Channing made people laugh. She made them sing. She made them fall in love with her characters. But she never got to do it as her full self. And in the legacy of stars who had to pass, hers is one of the loudest silences of all. Before there was Marilyn, before there was Kim, there was Rita Hayworth, the original pinup, the red-headed goddess, the love goddess, the woman who dripped sex appeal in a single glance. But the woman the world worshipped wasn't born Rita Hayworth. She was born Margarita Carmen Cancino, the daughter of a Spanish flamenco dancer and a Mexican-American mother. She grew up speaking Spanish, dancing to Latin rhythms, and carrying the face of her ancestors. But when she landed in Hollywood, that face had to go. Studio execs said she looked too ethnic, so they gave her a new name, a new story, and a new face, literally. They electrolyzed her hairline, permanently altering it to make her forehead appear more Anglo. They dyed her dark hair red. They lightened her skin tone on camera with makeup and lighting. They told her to forget her native language, and when they were done, Margarita was gone. In her place stood Rita Hayworth, the ultimate American bombshell, a white woman with no trace of the culture she came from. Even her voice was changed, her accent flattened, her movements tamed. By the time she starred in Gilda, her breakout role, there was nothing ethnic left, just allure, glamour, and a carefully crafted fantasy. Off-screen, Rita reportedly struggled with her identity. She once said, "Men go to bed with Gilda, but wake up with me." Because even in her personal life, she could never live up to the woman Hollywood built. Rita Hayworth wasn't black, but her story fits the pattern. She was told she wasn't enough, too foreign, too brown, too real. So they changed her, piece by piece, until she was marketable. She didn't pass. She was forced to be passed off as something else. And decades later, we still remember the icon, but rarely the woman she used to be. By the late 1960s, Gail Fisher had already made history. She was the first black woman to star in a primetime network drama, Mannix. And in 1970, she became the first black woman to win an Emmy for acting. But to this day, most people still don't know her name. Why? Because Gail Fisher's identity was never fully claimed, not by the roles she played or by the industry that quietly let her blend in. She was undeniably black, but her skin was light, her features non-threatening, and in an era where the network still feared showing interracial relationships, Gail became the workaround. On Mannix, she played Peggy Fair, a loyal secretary to a white private detective. The show never referenced her race, never acknowledged it, never gave her a family, a backstory, or a culture. She just existed, black in casting, invisible in context, and for the industry, that was ideal. It allowed executives to say they were being inclusive while never confronting what that actually meant. Gail was used to open the door, but only a crack. Off-screen, she was proud of who she was. She spoke out about representation. She mentored young actors. But on-screen, she was often trapped in roles that stripped her of that voice. Hollywood didn't ask her to pass, but it took advantage of how easy it was to let audiences assume whatever they wanted. She was a black woman made palatable to white America and then discarded when the times changed. After Mannix ended, the roles stopped coming. No follow-up shows, no major film career, just silence. And like so many others, Gail Fisher faded from the screen long before her legacy had a chance to grow. Because when your identity is always minimized, it becomes easy for people to forget you were ever there.